wealth transfer system.
Absolutely. It's all about transferring the wealth from you, the working people, to me, the people that I just don't want to sit and think. And devise schemes to rip you guys off. And once I get all this interest, it's no problem to buy judges and congressmen. That's no problem. When you got unlimited funds, and if you want a war, because I don't like you, I can fund all the money to do that too, and I get interest on that while I'm killing off your kids. I don't blame Congress except for being weak men. No guts, no balls, no willing to stand up and represent the people they know. But it's the bankers that did all the thinking. Let's be real honest. Now, I'm a congressman and I'm going to create money. I ain't going to get a penny benefit to myself. But it's just going to be spent out here to do something for the people. Do you really think I'm going to be overwhelmed to print too much of it? But I'm sitting in the bank, and the more I can get you to borrow, the more I get to print, and I get a personal profit out of every dime more I print. Which one's liable to do the most of that? I have a sneaking suspicion it'd be the banker. Because the congressman, he ain't getting any way to get any personal profit out of this, unless he takes a bribe. And they must do something, because how come all of them go to Congress poor and end up rich? George McGovern, which I didn't know personally, but I did know personally a guy that knew his dad really well. His dad was a preacher, didn't have much. He didn't have much. Got into Congress and come out of there a millionaire. How do you do that on a salary where it costs you more to get campaign for your job and you get out of it? Ought to be something going on. You know what? I got a valuable lesson one time just from common sense and logic. It was a guy by the name Monk. He used to be a senator in South Dakota. Never had much. When he died, he was very wealthy. And I happened to just stumble on the obituary, and I see that he had made all his money in the stock and bond market. Now, you don't suppose when I have the ability to manipulate this market by putting out rumors and doing all kinds of things, and I go to my congressman and said, I think if you would invest in so-and-so, it'd be really good business. So he takes a hit, he invests in it. My gosh, that stock goes ways up. Then he gets another call and says, I think it'd be really good business you got out of that about now. And he did, and the market went down, and he was filthy rich, and nobody could do a thing that he ever took a bar anyway. And I had a guy call me one time. You can't believe the guy that's called me when they hear about me. And believe it or not, I used to do this almost full time. I traveled all the way from Canada to Costa Rica and all the way from New York to California giving speeches. I used to stay at home when I was home, try to forget more calls and more meetings. I could go someplace else the rest of the time. So finally my wife said, Byron, you're going to have to decide whether you want to live at or whether you want to live with me alone. I looked at her and I just said, I guess I'll stay here. And that's when I quit traveling. Now I guess I'd do it again if she could go with me. We might be able to work that out if it ever took off and people start asking me, more people like this around the country asking to speak. And it may not, so if it don't, that's fine too.
So, is it easy for the banks to hide excess money?
Not particularly.
The reason I ask is a friend of mine lives in a little town up north, and she went out to get the mail one day, and she didn't pay attention, and there was a bank statement, and she just assumed it was hers. And in the statement, it was, this guy or lady or whatever had $1 million in an account, and she almost keeled over. Because she said, the town she lived in, everybody knew everybody, and like she said, if they had $100 in an account, they were doing good. I mean, that's what I was kind of wondering.
Well, those things can happen, but then you'd be surprised. My wife used to work in a brokerage service, and I don't want to give any away secret, but she would tell me about it. Accounts that some old farmers out in North Dakota have, and they'd be worth millions, and people lived with them didn't think they had hardly anything. They just lived in the same old house they'd always lived in and everything. But they started investing, and when them guys got started, like when my granddad and stuff, my granddad wouldn't have to be that way, but he happened to love to gamble too much, but that's neither here nor there. But if the people that got started early, and I can remember that I've had the people tell me the stories. In fact, my uncle, the first time he bought a bunch of calves, when he got the place, he bought a small place, not five quarters, I think. He borrowed every dime he could get from everybody, and then my dad loaned him some more, and he bought a bunch of calves, and he fed them, and they did pretty well. He was a good stockman and all that, good feeder. And they tripled in value. Well, man, 1 year, he was out of debt, never had to owe anybody again. He had no rancher that loaned him some money in that deal, and the rancher just kept begging him not to give him the money back. He says, I know you got it, and I know it's safe, and I don't want it, because I trust you, and I can see what you're doing. And after 10, 15 years, he said, oh, I just don't really want your money anymore for anything. Will you please take it back? He finally did. But see, lots of times these old farmers, they'd put in a flat crop, and that crop would pay for everything, all the land and everything else, and have cash. Free and clear in 1 year. You can't do that anymore.
No.
You're lucky if you come out with even break even.
No.
Time you pay the interest. And my daddy used to tell me, well, you know, what really killed the farmers in the 30s was when we went to tractors. See, I could never buy that because I, in my life, showed that when I finally got a better tractor and I could take care of my land, I could produce more, and I could produce more, I could raise more cattle. I wouldn't buy that. But, you know, my old man knew something. He didn't understand all he knew, but he had a lot of experience, and I kept listening to him. I knew he wasn't right, but what was it that all of a sudden after they started buying the tractors, things went to heck? Well, it was very simple. When you have a horse, you raise all your own fuel, all your own power, don't you? And you feed him with your own fuel, don't you? Because horse runs on grass, not gas. And that's an amazing thing, too. When you rode a horse, you had the right to travel, but when you got the vehicle that burned gas instead of grass, you have to have a license. How did we lose our right to travel there? Just because you got a little better, had a little new invention. Another little thing that government loves to do to us. And I don't trust government either, but I trust bankers even less. And of course, if one's bribing the other one, what the heck you got then? I mean, I think you got a real pot of dirty worms in. But so now when they started to go into cars and tractors, now they had to borrow the money to get the car and tractor. They didn't raise it anymore, did they? When they borrowed it, the interest expenses went up. Because when you borrow, interest becomes a cost of doing business. The bigger your debt, normally, the bigger your interest load, the more cost of doing business. The more cost of doing business, the more you have to raise your prices to make it work, don't you? That's where price inflation comes from, not because they create more money, because they create it as interest-bearing debt, and the bigger the debt, the bigger the interest load. The bigger the interest load, the more I got to raise my price on the finished, and the more I got to drop my price on the raw materials. I remember them old boys saying, my gosh, I sell my wheat the same now as I did in the 40s. But my tractor cost me $30,000 and it cost me $5,000 then. And that's what broke them. And then all the bankers had to do was start pulling back the money.
So how does it get from a banker to a politician without anybody finding out?
In cash.
Oh, just like I told you, they can go through the market, they can give them hints, they can give them cash under the table. There's all kinds of ways to bribe a guy if he's willing to take it. Free trips here and there, and his kids get grants, and all kinds of little things that doesn't cost you anything. It's pretty easy to hide. If I walked in here and give you $100,000 in cash, and I just set my briefcase down and you picked it up when I walked off, who would know?
Yeah, but how do you explain the $100,000 being out of the bank?
Well, that's no problem. A rich man, he just draws it out. And a rich man's the old man kid, because you couldn't. I went to a bank one time when I was young and kind of a smart kid. Shouldn't say that. I just thought it'd be kind of fun to walk up and pay PCA in cash. So I'd sold probably was about $40,000 worth of cattle that day. Well, I took it into the bank, there was cash written on it. I said, I want to cash this for cash. Ha! They laughed at me. Who are you kidding? We don't have that kind of money around here. You couldn't get it if you tried. Just take that check up to PCA and give it to them like you always do. So I did. Never give it much thought. And then later on, when I began to understand this, I said, I'm going to go get some cash. And I had $25,000 in cash then in the bank. 5,000 of it was kids' savings, the rest of it was mine. So you can't take savings out just automatically. He can force you to wait on that.